Oh, how wonderful to see all of you here. I'm so appreciative of you being here, and I'm also appreciative of all the thousands of people around the planet at this moment watching this show live, because all of you are here to pay tribute to a great man. I'm here to do the same. This great man, Wayne, so influenced my life at so many different levels as he's influenced people all over the world. People say that maybe Wayne has passed, but Wayne can never pass. Wayne is written into the history of this civilization. He has changed this world by his being in this world. And I know that, as I said, from my personal level, as well as all of you, how he's affected your own personal life. What was interesting was the first time I ran into Wayne, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he had written. I didn't even meet him. How did I get in touch with Wayne? And the answer was simple. My research at the University of Wisconsin, while I was teaching at the medical school, revealed a whole new insight into the nature of biology, which is written into the biology of belief. At that time, all of the scientists in my community were so gung-ho about genes controlling life, and my research came up and revealed that was totally false. And I was the only one. And I kept trying to influence my colleagues about this new science, and they kept resisting it because they were playing the game of I'm with you and everybody's over there, and Lipton, you're over here. So I thought, okay, guess what? I walked out of the university. I had tenure, and I said, this is not the world that I can work with. I walked out and I went into the mainstream and I started talking to the public, and the most wonderful thing happened when I started getting into the public. More and more people showed up. More and more people were interested in all of this, and I was wondering myself, well, where's all this interest coming from? And I started to find there was a common denominator. Most of them had been awakened to another reality by Wayne. Wayne had changed their lives and said, there's something outside of this box that is much bigger than what we've been talking about in the field of science. And I was so excited because I went into this community that Wayne had set up, and they were the most receptive of all the people. And it was really interesting because that was how he affected me on a professional level, but more so, Wayne is also a very wonderful teacher, as you well know, but he also does something very interesting. When he finds interesting people, such as beautiful Anita, who was just out here, he doesn't just say, oh, let me tell you what Anita said. He said, let me bring Anita here and let Anita tell you what she said. And he did that for me. He got Hay House with Reed and Louise and said, let's bring Lipton into this group, which to me was kind of exciting because I found a home after being out on the street. And we had a wonderful time together. Every time I would meet up with him, it was really exciting. As Anita said, he is much larger than life. And, you know, I don't have a great stature. I'm relatively short, but I didn't realize how short I was until the first day that I met Wayne. And I hugged him, and then I looked up, and I realized this guy is big. But instead of being intimidated by that bigness, there was a different feeling about it. I felt in his arms when I held him and he held me and we hugged at our first meeting, I felt something completely different. I felt the security of a child who was loved by a parent. I was held by him and I could feel the love that exuded from Wayne. In my first picture here that I'd like to show you of Wayne and myself, this was an interesting picture because this picture really was outside in the street having a wonderful conversation, heart to heart. I took the opportunity to put my hand on his heart so I could get my battery charged at the same time. And we had a great time talking, and this was after he just presented to an audience of several thousand people. He's getting a breather in his break, and guess what? What happened next was some people came up and started talking. He gave his lecture again right out there in the street to two people, because that's who Wayne was. He had a message to share, and it didn't make a difference if there were thousands of people to hear the message or one person was here to message. He knew he had a mission. He came to this planet, carried out this mission, and guess what? And we all know this, and Anita mentioned it, and for me as a scientist, I'm excited to say this. We can't die. We're not even in these bodies. We're out here. Wayne's still here. Anybody can talk to him at any time they want because he's in the field of our love in our world. And it's interesting because, well, he affected me on a professional level. He affected me on a public level with all those people that I met. He affected me on a personal level. He was a mentor. He gave me advice and help and said, listen, let's get that message of yours out into this world. And I so appreciated that. But I know he affected people, millions of people all around the world. Every one of you may come up with a story about how something he said, something he wrote, changed your life at that moment. Well, of course all of you have that. And I have a dear friend of mine by the name of Laurelyn from Oregon. Laurelyn and I have been friends for over 30 years, and Margaret, my partner, and I perceive of Laurelyn and her family as our family. And it's interesting because Laurelyn, like many of us, had a real issue with a change of life. In 1976, when Wayne's first book came out, Laurelyn had left her husband. She was born and raised in Los Angeles, Tinseltown, and at some point said, this is not the life. This is not the life at all. And she just picked up her 4 kids and went off into the woods of Oregon, bought an old piece of farmhouse that hippies used to live in, and brought her family there. And what was so interesting is, of course, she went without a husband, without a father for her kids. But what did she get? She took Wayne's book. And that was the first. She now owns every book that Wayne ever wrote, every video he was ever on. Why was it relevant? Because Wayne became the father of that family. He raised her kids with a heart and a consciousness and integrity and intelligence. And Laurelyn's kids today are just the most wonderful people in their community, evolutionarily advancing that civilization. Why? Because they grew up with Wayne. They took Wayne's message and built it right into their lives. Wayne is their father. And when he provided that growth period for them, they turned into the best specimens of humanity I know today. And they carried that all the way through their life. One of the interesting stories is when one of Laurelyn's children, her youngest daughter, was to have a baby, and that was back in 2000. During the last trimester, her daughter was reading Wayne's Your Sacred Self, and that became her reading every day in the last trimester. And it comes time for the birth, and of course, Laurelyn, being who she is and the community she was in, it was not a hospital birth. It was a birth at home. A midwife and a bunch of women, including my partner Margaret, were there, all the women supporting her daughter in this very momentous, important event. And what happened was the baby started to come through in the birth canal, but it was a breech birth. The legs came out first, and the baby got stuck in that position. They were more than a half hour away from a hospital at the closest place, it may be an hour. And they realized, oh my God, there's nothing you can do. You're out here in the middle of nowhere. And the baby's legs were twitching and twitching as it was coming out of the birth canal. But by the time the child was delivered, it laid out on the bed, no movement. It was blue already from not breathing, no breath. Everyone in the room started to be in a moment of fear. They started to just, oh my God. And her daughter just got up in all full power of Wayne and all full power of a woman who's a mother and protecting her child, just got up and looked at all the women in that room and said to her mother, who had that look of fear on her face, she said, "Mother, wipe that look off your face right now." She turned to the rest of the women and she said to them, "Fill this room with love and light right now." She was taking the words right out of Wayne. Wayne was in the room. At that moment, she also then said, "There's no fear in here. And what we're going to do is this. I want you all to make the sound of creation, the meditation that Wayne taught." And all the people in the room started to go through the meditation. And as their voices lifted, all of a sudden, this baby that had not moved, that didn't twitch or nothing, all of a sudden took a breath and started to breathe, and the color started to come back in. And the whole reality of all this was to recognize the power that Wayne was in that room. Wayne came out of that woman's voice saying, "Do not live in this fear. You are more powerful than you ever know. It's only your fear that is limiting you." And the whole wonderful part about this is Wayne's here all the time. Wayne has helped people take the power back over their lives. Most of you have probably experienced that personally. So I'm not here to be sad, although it really shocked me when I heard about it, because I've never known somebody so full of the vital essence of life as Wayne that the thought of him not having that it just didn't compute. But when I did realize it and own that, then I also owned the truth and the wonderful vision, as I said. Wayne will never leave us. Wayne is part of human civilization's history. The evolution of this planet was greatly influenced by this great man. And before I close, I want to show a video, a little segment of a show that I was on with Wayne. Give you the little background story on it, and it goes like this. The first time I really met in the public with Wayne was at I Can Do It conference in Las Vegas in 2008. My mother was about 90-something at the time, had bad knees, so we had to bring her to Las Vegas in a wheelchair, put her up in the front. And this was a show of Hay House Radio, which was being videotaped. And what's interesting about this, before the show was going, I was trying to, enthuse my mother, but the community was like you. There was a lot of energy. Just, come on, this is a great place to be. My mother had an issue, a developmental issue growing up in the family she grew up in. Happiness was not really allowed to be expressed at some level, so I always wanted her to be happy. I always tried to make jokes for her or something, and sometimes she would smile, but you could see it was a stretch for her imagination. And I want to show you this video because it resulted in such a radical change in my mother that this is the first time she laughed out so loud that tears were coming down her eyes. And it all reflects the joy and the humor that was wrapped up in Wayne. So if I can push this button and maybe have a slide show up.
Wayne's World, party time, excellent.
Introducing yourselves to one another.
Okay. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Wayne. Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, I made it because I'm on the stage with Wayne Dyer. And that was the part that opened my mother up. And she laughed, and the next few years of her life, she was open to laughing. And I have to thank Wayne because he's that power that brought joy and laughter and consciousness and integrity and intelligence. As everyone has already mentioned, that is Wayne. Wayne is here. Wayne is here right now. He will never leave us. He's been one of our greatest teachers, and I've been so honored to be that close to Wayne that I could leave you with this slide that I will always remember in this next picture right here of myself and Wayne. And this is a picture that I will always remember Wayne with. And I want to thank you for honoring Wayne. Wayne is our hero, and Wayne is here. Thank you all very much.